Hey guys, in today's video, I'm finally going to be putting back together Judson's winch. If you're new here, welcome to the channel and don't forget to subscribe. So before I get started, I'd like to give a special thanks to caffeine, because if it wasn't for Red Bull and coffee, I wouldn't be able to film this late. So this video is going to be part 2. If you want to check out part 1, you can click this link up here, but don't forget to come back here to finish. So where I left off in the last video, I was looking for some parts. I had everything cleaned. I just needed to order some seals and get them in. Now, since the last video, I have painted a few things. I've done a little more cleaning. But other than that, pretty much starting right where we left off in the last video. So all the seals I was able to find, I ordered from Grainger. I'll go ahead and put links to all the seals in the description below. Now, some of the seals are not perfect, but I think it'll work good, last a long time, just as long as we take care of it. Now for assembly, I'm going to be using the right stuff. And remember, if you're not using the right stuff, it's definitely the wrong stuff. I'll go ahead and put a link for this in the description down below as well. So for my gear oil, I went ahead and picked up this 8590. It's rated for extreme pressure, which is what it calls out for in the original manual. I think this will work great. If it doesn't, I'll change it out. These O-ring kits I just picked up at Harbor Freight. So the first thing I'm going to start doing is installing all my new seals. I'm going to go ahead and start with this bushing for the motor here. And I'm also going to replace the O-ring that is around this bushing. There's also one that goes in here. This is the seal for your worm gear. And it is going to be, not that one. It's going to be this big box for this tiny seal. Alright, and there's one more seal down. Next, we're going to go ahead and put in the seal for the top cover plate. So this one here just doesn't fit quite tight enough for my liking. So what I'm going to do is put a little RTV in there and then push it on in. Hopefully that holds up okay. The next seal I'm going to install is the one that goes right here on the bottom of this top cover here. So the last seal we're going to go ahead and install is the one that goes into our plunger assembly here. It just goes right on the end here, and then the plunger all kind of goes together in there. So with all my seals installed, I'm going to go ahead and start assembling my housing. First, I'm going to start with the front gear housing, and I'm going to attach it to this upper gear housing here. So I'm going to take a little bit of oil and run it around the edge of this bushing here, just so that it slides in nice and I don't run into any issues. The next thing I'm going to do is take my sealant. I'm going to run my sealant around here. I just want to make sure that I have a good seal. I don't want to pack it on too tight. I just want to make sure that these two faces have some kind of gasket between them. Even that's probably just a little too much. Now when assembling it, you want to make sure that you don't get any of that RTV in the hole. It's in, and now I can put my bolts on. Now, you don't want to tighten them up too much. Don't forget that this is an aluminum housing and it will pull the threads. Alright, so now that we are attached here, I'm going to go ahead and install my worm gear. Now, because everything has been sitting for a couple of months probably, everything does have a little bit of a layer of rust on it, but nothing too bad to worry about. I'm just going to oil everything decently before it gets put together. Now with the worm gear installed, we can go ahead and install this back piece here. Now once again, we want to run some RTV around here to give it that good seal that we need so we don't lose any fluids down the road. Once again, do not forget that this is an aluminum housing, so you do not want to crank down on them too hard. You just want to tighten them up. So the next thing that I'm going to install is the motor. But first I'm going to go ahead and insert this bushing into my front gear housing here. Now this new O-ring is going to stick out quite a bit, so I'm going to oil this up really good before I slide it together so I don't pinch my O-ring. Alright, so now that that's in there, we can go ahead and install the rest of our motor. So again, I just want to coat a little bit of oil on here, just to help everything slide through. Also, it'll help preserve that seal in there so we don't make any scrapes into that seal. And next, we can install our housing. Now when sliding all this together, you want to try to line up your motor so that your posts are on the top here. And then you're going to need to depress your brushes so that they'll fit around where they contact. Ooh, hurt my finger. And now it should be all slid on there good. I'm going to have to wipe this down. I just got black fingerprints all over it. And now that that's in place, we can slowly slide our backing plate on here and tighten down our bolts. Alright, before I move on, I need to reassemble the free spool lock assembly. Now, I don't believe I covered the disassembly in the last video, so I'm going to go over this in more detail, putting it together. That way, you know how to take it apart. So the first thing I'm going to do is slide the centerpiece in all the way through. Now, once you've got it started through, you're going to take your key and make sure that the hole is towards the bottom, because there's a set screw on that inner piece that you're going to tighten down into that. You're just going to slide it into the side here. And then once it's through and you think you got it centered, you can go ahead and tighten down that set screw. Now that that's through, we can go ahead and install our spring. You can just slide our spring down in, and then we need to compress that spring and slide our roll pin back through. And now we're assembled. And now I need to look at my phone because I can't remember what the next step was. Alright, so with that assembled, we can go ahead and set our spool on our base plate. Now, these are the little Teflon pieces that were on there before, and I'm going to reuse them because they're in really good shape. Now, depending on who you ask, they'll tell you that all this needs to be greased, or they'll tell you that the grease is unnecessary because that's what this Teflon ring is for, as well as the brass bushing. It's your personal preference whether you want to put some grease on there or not. I'm going to clean this up, just put a little bit on there, and that way when it comes in and out, it'll just have a clean coat. Now when you install your spool, you want to make sure that the wire is going counterclockwise. So if you're looking down at the spool, the wire is going counterclockwise or towards the motor. And now we can put this bad boy in. Now there was grease in here when I pulled it apart. I'm not sure if there was grease supposed to be in there, if it was meant to be there, but a little bit of grease isn't going to hurt anything. So I'm going to coat a little bit of grease on here and slide it all down in. Alright, she's down on in there. Now with the spool on, we can go ahead and attach the rest of our housing. But first you want to make sure that you reinstall your tensioner. It just sets into this hole right here. Now mine, when I pulled it apart, had a washer on top, so I'm going to reinstall that washer. Alright, with our tensioner in place, we can go ahead and set our housing up here. I'm thinking maybe it would have been a good idea to wait on the motor. It's too late now. Now, because we did put a new seal in here, I would recommend coating the plunger in oil just so that when you slide down, you don't have any problems. It doesn't catch. It's a nice, smooth, yeah, it doesn't break it, basically. I forgot an important step. That other Teflon piece has to go on the top here. We're going to pull it off again. Well, at least I'm getting good practice. Now, once again, if you want to put a little bit of grease on here, you can do that. If not, that's fine too, I'm sure. It all depends on who you ask. All right, we're in place, and now I can put my bolts back in the back here. Once again, you don't want to be tightening these up with an impact or anything. Just snug them up, because just get them tight enough, because this is aluminum housing. You don't want to crack it. All right, now that I'm all attached there, I'm going to go ahead and install my large gear that goes up here. If you have any trouble getting it to go all the way down, you can always just turn your worm gear a little bit, and it should line up and fall into place. All right, now that that's in there, I can go ahead and reinstall my top cover. Now, before we put on our cover plate, you just want to do a nice bead of RTV all the way around. And above your worm gear, you want to make sure that you surround that bolt hole really good and get just a little bit inside the hole, because it does go all the way through. Now, I know that I'm going to sound like a broken record, but once again, you don't want to over torque these. They go into an aluminum housing and it'll just pull the threads. All right, and the last thing we need to install on the top is our handle. Now, the handle can be oriented one way or the other. There's plenty of bolts on top. I'm going to go ahead and just stick it where it was. I'm probably going to end up building something later. This is missing an important piece. Now, when you lift up on the handle, there's supposed to be a piece here that folds down so that it'll lock the handle in place, and this one is missing. So I'm going to end up making a small piece in the future. I'm not sure yet, because when we mount it to Judson's Suburban, we might decide that we want to modify this handle so that he can reach it from somewhere else. Now, because this is open on top here, you do kind of want to seal it. I did paint this surface, but that'll be okay. We'll just take a little bit of RTV on here, tighten it down, make sure we get a little bit on the bolt, and it'll be perfectly fine. Now that all that's done, I'm going to go ahead and stand this up so I can start installing my gears. So next up, it's time to install all the gears in this little gearbox here. What I'm going to do is start with the motor gear first. It's keyed. I did have to replace the key. I got a new one here. And I'm just going to get this key in place and then slide on my new gear. Now, this gear also has a set screw. I actually had to drill out the set screw. It was pretty messed up. All right, now that that's set, I'm going to go ahead and install my new bearing. Once again, Just a little bit of oil in there. It's all getting oil later anyway, it doesn't matter. Next, we're going to go ahead and install this gear here. Now, you want to make sure that the cone faces the winch. And don't forget that this one gets a snap ring. Now that that one's on there, we can go ahead and install this one with the shaft with the longer portion facing up. Now next we can install this bigger gear here, and you want to make sure that the cone faces out on this one. And then last, your other bearing. Alright, now all that's left is to put our faceplate on and pour some oil in it. So one last time, we're going to lay a small bead of RTV all the way around. Alright, we're all done. Now all that's left is to add your fluids and test it. Now when you're adding your fluids, on the top cover here, there's a pipe plug. That's where you will fill it. And on the side of the housing, there's another pipe plug. And that will be your fluid level. So you go ahead and pull that off, fill it until it starts coming out, cap it off, you're good. Now on the front housing, there's a pipe plug on the side here. Same thing, pull it off, fill it up till it starts coming out, put your cap back on, and you are good to go. Now, the manufacturer originally recommended checking it every 6 months. I would just keep an eye out for leaks. If it leaks, fill it. You don't want to empty it. You don't want to run it without oil. You want to make sure that you fix any leaks, because guaranteed if it's leaking, contaminants can go inside and you'll end up with a winch full of water. Moment of truth. It works. I'm super proud. Justin's going to be incredibly happy. It's not the prettiest right now. I am going to clean up all the excess RTV. I'm so tired. I'm going in for the night. Anyway, if you like this video, make sure you give this video a thumbs up. As always, don't forget to subscribe. You can check me out on TikTok at It's Project Venture, as well as Instagram at It's Project Venture. Thanks for watching. Now for assembly, I'm going to be using the right stuff, because if you're not using the wrong stuff, you're definitely using the wrong stuff. I screwed that up. Alexa, how many pints are in a quart?
1 quart is 2 pints.